In today's video, I'm going to be talking about liquidity risk, we're going to be looking at corn, and we're going to have a look at the US election. Hello and welcome to another ACY Securities Market Update. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be your host through today's trading journey. The first thing I'm looking at today is on liquidity risk. Now, specifically looking at the UK and then Japan. Now, in the UK, nearly 40% of businesses have taken on some form of government loan to try and support their businesses throughout the pandemic. Now, at this stage, a quarter expect they're going to have to scale down to pay their debt, with 1 in 10 expecting they're probably going to have to cease operations almost entirely. At this point in time, there's 1.2 million firms in the small to medium enterprise market that have accumulated £53 billion in debt. So the numbers are getting up there. Now, when we look at this, it considers the idea of what's going on behind the scenes. There is some level of liquidity risk occurring, and of course, an issue when it comes to the consumer being able to spend their money. If a lot of these businesses go under, there's no shops to take up placement. Now, to have a look at the same sort of issues in Japan, all but a little bit different, the issues are almost the same. Record jumps in lending to businesses has occurred. The Bank of Japan has also loaned out nearly $1 trillion so far. Now, of course, they're at risk of again creating these zombie companies that we saw a little while ago. The idea of a zombie company meaning that they're pumping money into it, but it's barely hanging on to life. So in this instance, it's now going to continue right through to Japan as well, not just the US. We hope that we don't see it happen again. Back in the 1990s, zombie companies was coined via businesses in Japan because of the stimulus measures that were being provided. Now again, we're reaching that same point, and unfortunately, the situation is very, very different for Japan, with them not having quite the same economy that they did back in 1990. Now, moving on from the zombie companies and liquidity issues, China is set to buy corn, or at least it looks that way. Soybean and corn growing fields have been smashed by 3 different typhoons in the last 2 weeks. And so far, purchases have already exceeded 10 million tons. So economists are starting to think about the idea that perhaps they're going to need to purchase more soybeans and more corn, which at this point looks like perhaps 20 million tons is a potential target for some time in the near future. So if you are trading your futures and commodity indexes, keep an eye on what's going on here with corn in the near few days. It's already had a little bit of a rise just at the sign of this sort of news. Now, looking at the election for the US, at this stage, 538 have forecast that the estimates for Biden to win are somewhere in the 71.1% range. That is a very big figure very early on. Naturally, these sort of early polling and questions that come out of exit polls are a little bit too advanced. We really can't say whether it goes which way at this stage in the game. However, their models are predicting that it is likely to be a Biden victory. Now, the final one for you to have a look at today is Australian NAB Business Confidence surveys. They've seen them fall again in August. The fall, as though, is reflecting weaknesses in employment, sales, and profit, all largely driven by some of the lockdowns that we're seeing in Victoria. Of course, that number is probably going to continue to go down over the next coming months, purely until we start to see some resolution around the Victorian lockdowns, and of course, we start seeing interstate travel across Australia. For the time being, we should expect these numbers to remain subdued. Now, looking at the news ahead, it is a very busy day for the euro. We have French and German trade balance figures coming out, Italian retail sales. We then have employment change for the whole of the euro area. We then have revised GDP figures. Now, when it comes to revised GDP figures, they are generally not as important as what we get on the preliminary. There is more impact on the first lot than there is on a revision. However, it's still worth keeping an eye to see if there are any major changes to how they've put the figure together. Now, the last 2 are for the US tonight. We have NFIB Small Business Index figures coming out, and of course, US consumer credit. So a couple of things there for you to look at, particularly if you're trading the euro dollar. Now, if there's anything from today's video you'd like to get in contact with me about, perhaps it's from my appearance this morning on AusBiz, feel free to shoot me an email at talk2al@acy.com. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video so you can get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.